Caught off guard, my mother, 52, casually mentioned her ex-husband Brian moved back in. He's helping me finish the house, she says. I spat out, not if he built me a castle. Now my bond feels like it's crumbling over a man who shattered our family. What do I do next? Okay, so everyone I have spoken to has no idea what I should do, mainly because I do not know of anyone who has been in this situation, so I am hoping Reddit can reach the right people about this. As usual, this is a throwaway account. All names are not real and personal details have been altered for privacy. Also, I apologize in advance. This is very long sorry. Historically, mothers and daughters have not had the easiest relationships, and my mother and I are no different. I can confidently say that we have never been very close. After my mother and my father, 53 years old, male, separated when I was 7, I spent a lot of time with my father because my mother did not have the flexible work hours that he had. I do not remember too much of this period in our lives, but I do recall how depressed she was. She grew up extremely religious, so being the first woman in her family and church to get a divorce was no easy feat. I can only imagine what she went through. That being said, it meant I grew up quite independent. I remember being able to take care of myself, my older brother, he is currently 24 years old, male, the pets, and the whole house if necessary. This was not consistent but was not necessarily rare. I did not mind at the time, however, it just meant that I did not really connect with her in the same way I connected with my father. All of this background is relevant, I promise. Fast forward to high school where she introduced me to Brian, 51 years old male, whom she married when I was in year 10, 15 years old. Both of my parents have remarried and I honestly could not have imagined surviving my teenage years without them. Step-parents are often portrayed as cunning or evil, but having my stepmother has been life-changing. We understand each other much better and are significantly more similar, even in our appearances. I have always known my mother to be a little envious of this, but she did her best to never show it and neither of us talks about it. I know it is no one's fault, so to bring it up would just be unkind. I began to deal with my own baggage, and like most teenage girls, I started to have issues with my mother. I will give my younger self some credit. I was dealing with challenges that some people do not experience in their lifetime, especially those my mother has never gone through: homophobia, bullying, eating disorders, depression, self-harm, suicidal ideation, etc., which made understanding each other really difficult. The COVID-19 pandemic struck during my last year of high school, and it became clear to me that we were probably best in smaller doses. However, after I had spent a year in lockdown with my father and stepmother, she came around to understanding why we did not always get along and apologized for some of the things she had done during my childhood and teenage years. This was fantastic for our relationship, and while I remained full-time at my father's house after turning 18, I visited her once a week during university. We never fought. I thought we could not get closer until my mother called me to talk one weekend. She sat me down and explained that she was leaving my stepfather of 10 years because she had found evidence of him cheating on her for a year and a half with a coworker. We sat on that couch talking, laughing, and crying for hours. Let me tell you, this was surprising. Brian had always been a good and dependable stepfather. He taught me how to drive, helped me with anything without hesitation, and contacted everyone he knew to help me while I was looking for internships in university. Therefore, discovering that he had not been the family man he claimed to be was devastating, especially for my mother. If the first divorce was difficult, I could not imagine how she felt about her second. But quite honestly, her attitude about everything brought us really close. She was excited about trading the big, cold, half-renovated house for a small apartment in the city with enough room for sleepovers and within walking distance of bars and clubs. She had goals of learning a new language, attending cooking or dance classes, traveling, and overall being free. As someone who is not only highly independent but also a big introvert who loves solo traveling, I was ecstatic for her. She was so excited for all of it, and I was thrilled that we finally had something in common. The decision to leave Brian continued to be validated, as she described interacting with him through lawyers and realtors. From every encounter she told me about, it sounded like he had revealed himself to be quite deceitful at his core and was merely a good liar. You can imagine my surprise when I went for my weekly visit and she told me he had moved back into the house. She claimed that because the house was half renovated, he had to finish before they could put the house up for sale. Brian is in trades. Personally, I was a little perplexed as to why he needed to stay in the house to do so, but I figured she was an adult and he had the decency to find somewhere else to stay during our weekly visits, so I did not push it. However, during every week of my visit, she talked about him with a concerning frequency. For example, he told me he is in therapy now. He seems quite regretful and guilty about it all. He asked about you today. I can understand why she would mention him frequently. I mean, if I had that situation, I think I would want to speak negatively about him until the end of time. Still, it was the gradual warming up to him that made me uncomfortable. Nevertheless, she allowed me to keep my distance and did not push any boundaries. Finally, about 5 months after kicking him out, she admitted that she did not feel finished with their relationship, stating that he was so different now and their relationship was better than it had ever been. She also disclosed that I was the only one who knew, and she did not feel comfortable telling anyone else just yet other than my brother. So I did my best to be sensitive to her feelings and told her she was doing the right thing by following her heart, but I was honest about not understanding it. She accepted that, saying she did not understand it herself, and ended the conversation by stating they would be splitting up for a year, that he would be moving states to live with his family, and she was going through with a small apartment 20 minutes from the house, and they would revisit the relationship in a year once they had both had some time to heal. I felt a bit relieved and moved on. However, for the next month, it was Brian this, Brian that. I found out he was living full-time at the house now, had spent time with some extended family, and apart from vacant spots on their ring fingers, it sounded like they were back to normal. I was confused and, to be honest, disgusted. Brian had not only cheated on my mother for a year and a half with a woman he still works with, but without going into details, he disrupted our whole extended family. Not to mention, he tore apart our immediate family and betrayed all of our trust. Brian had 2 children the same age as my brother and me, and although things were a little tense, I took some pride in having a large family, often telling people we were like the Brady Bunch. So when he tore our family apart, I had to quietly mourn that aspect of my life and the prospect of what I had been looking forward to, being an aunt, enjoying large family Christmas celebrations and other related sentimental family experiences. Therefore, when Christmas was overly quiet, cold, and overall rather disappointing, it was difficult for all of us. What truly upset me, however, was when I received an email from Brian on Christmas morning, along with a receipt stating he had paid for a month of my schooling. I take extra classes on weekends and pay for them out of pocket. He did something similar for my brother, and since it was the first time he had contacted us since the divorce, we were quite shocked. She told us just get over it already, then rushed us out the door shortly after because she was having Brian over for Christmas lunch. It felt like a slap in the face. I think I was just frustrated that she did not realize how uncomfortable it made both my brother and me. A couple of days later, it was my former step-sibling's birthday. She called me to ask what I wanted her to write in the card for me, and when I said I did not want to be included in the gift, she finally picked up on the fact that something was wrong with me. A week later, we met at a local pub to discuss it, only to end up rushing out after dinner because we were beginning to make a scene with our tears and quiet yelling. Basically, I explained that I had no interest in being related to Brian ever again. After what he did to her, there was no way I could regain that trust. I said verbatim, not if he built me a castle, not if he groveled at my feet, not if I could somehow guarantee that he would never do it again. He does not deserve that from me. I remember saying that because I had practiced in the mirror what I would say for a week straight. She lashed out at me after that. She did not understand why I was so close-minded, and I am paraphrasing here, but she could not comprehend why I was denying her love and called me selfish. I was not interested in what she had to say after that, but she refused to leave the car unless I agreed to return to her house to talk more. Essentially, after hours of crying while fighting, we agreed to disagree. Although she apologized for what she said in her anger, she could not understand why I would shut out someone who had done so much for me and take it out on my step-siblings as well, while I did not understand why in the world she would want a man like that in her life. For the last couple of months, she has been in her new apartment, and per the boundaries we set after the fight, we do not talk about Brian, my former step-siblings, or anyone in his family. She has respected this, and thank goodness for that. However, this brings us to the last couple of weeks. Either she lied to my face or she phrased things incorrectly, because they are actively dating just long distance, as he still lives a couple of states away. I cannot express how uncomfortable and disgusted this makes me feel toward both of them. My mother is careful with her words, so something tells me she lied and has been waiting for me to figure it out myself without disrespecting my boundaries, because she has been visiting his state once every month since he moved. And as I write this, she just returned from a 2-week vacation with him. How do I know she is with him? She hates solo traveling, does not know anyone except him and his family in that state, is never holding the camera in any of the photos she posts, has been suspiciously vague about those trips, which, if you know my mother, is not like her. And last but not least, last night she sent me a video of her and he is in half of it. I am at my wit's end here. I am angry. I am angry at her for lying, I am angry at him for being a liar and a cheater, and I am angry at both of them for, honestly, I do not even know what for at this point. They are getting back together, there is no doubt in my mind about that. So now I must decide what I will do. One thing is for sure, he is not coming back into my life ever. This is where I need guidance. When she approaches me with the truth and the inevitable confession that they are getting back together, how do I protect myself and my boundaries? How do I begin to empathize with her choices? How do I continue to maintain a relationship with my mother if he fully returns into her life? Mostly, I am uncertain what kind of happy relationship my mother and I can have going forward if she chooses to reunite with him. As I mentioned, we are not close, but she is my mother. I cannot lose her to an unworthy man like Brian. The only consolation I have is that I am planning to move permanently overseas after I finish my studies, unrelated to this situation. But honestly, it is not doing much to convince me otherwise. So realistically, I would only have to deal with this situation for maybe 2 months each year in the future. Part of me wonders if my mother is counting on this so he can move back in the future. Still, this is a conversation that will occur by the year's end, so I need to be prepared and organized for it. This is where I will conclude this post. Thank you for reading if you made it this far. I hope this reaches anyone who might have been in a similar situation and can offer some advice. Story 2. My girlfriend of 2 years, always supportive, turned out to be lying about her drug use for a year. I promise I'm done, she said, while I discovered she was using MDMA and drunk driving. Now, as I confront her, I struggle to decide. Can I trust her again? I have been in a relationship with my girlfriend for 2 years now. We have recently moved in together and started our early life. We are both 18. Last week, I had a suspicion strong enough that it compelled me to look through her social media account, and I discovered that she had been dishonest with me about many things. To elaborate, when I met her, I was addicted to marijuana and so was she. This shared addiction helped form our bond. I eventually changed and completely stopped smoking. After one occasion when she smoked herself to sleep on a day when we were supposed to go out together, I asked her to stop so that we could continue our relationship. This request stemmed from a painful experience in one of my previous serious relationships, where my partner was also an addict, which negatively affected our time together and led me to engage in behaviors, such as smoking, that have adverse effects on my overall well-being. Anyway, my girlfriend had been trying to quit at my request, reducing her consumption from 1 to 5 times a day to just once a week or even once a month. At least that is what I believed. I felt genuinely happy for both her and us, and I supported her occasional use, understanding how difficult it can be to quit entirely. I acknowledged her efforts and expressed how proud I was of her. She accepted my praise and recognition. However, this was never truly the case, as I later discovered through her social media messages that she had abused MDMA and alcohol for several months, spending hundreds to thousands of dollars on her addiction. On one occasion when she used MDMA, it was right after an argument we had. She claimed it was because she felt so guilty that she needed to indulge. Not that I need it, but it stings to know that during this period, gift giving was at an all-time low. I also learned that she had been drinking and driving for hours at a time. Furthermore, when we both decided to quit smoking cigarettes, with the agreement that we would support each other, she was searching the streets for discarded cigarettes for tobacco to use with her bong, as well as purchasing vapes, likely to avoid the smell of cigarettes. She suffered from drug-induced psychosis for several weeks due to the MDMA, and continues to experience cognitive deficits and memory loss to this day. I found voice messages sent to her friend criticizing me and my personality, mostly during times when we were unhappy with each other, such as during arguments. When I uncovered all of this, she was not home but rather spending time with her friend in our hometown. I confronted her over text, feeling very angry, and she reacted with frustration that I had gone through her messages. I asked her to return home so we could speak in person. She refused to come home, so I drove to her without informing her of my plans. I entered the room where she was and found her having a great time, upside down on a bed with her friend, smiling and drunk while drinking more. It is important to note that she has always struggled significantly with confrontation, more than most people. She immediately shouted at me to leave and slammed the door. We ended up talking in her car after she came outside, a very emotional discussion that left me feeling uneasy for several hours. She was apologetic and acknowledged her guilt. Despite my anger at being deceived, I felt a strong resentment toward her. We talked for about an hour and a half, after which I left, knowing she would be coming home shortly. However, it took her at least 2 hours to return, and she arrived high, immediately driving to her dealer's house after getting out of the car with me. Over the next few days, we stayed up late, talking and sharing tears and apologies. Despite all her guilt and sorrow, I continued to catch her in multiple lies told to lessen her accountability and downplay the situation. One such lie concerned her MDMA use. She claimed she could not remember it due to the memory loss caused by the drug, even though it had been a major topic of our lengthy conversations. After discovering these additional lies, I wish I could believe that the complete truth is now known. I hope there is nothing else I need to uncover, and I want to trust that she is being truthful with herself and with me. She insists that she is committed to being honest from this point onward. I am uncertain if I am making the right decision by staying with her. All the moments we shared before this revelation feel fabricated, an identity built on lies. If I had known the truth, I would not have kissed her, I would not have had sex with her, and I would not have missed her when she was away, nor would I have given her massages when she was sore. At this moment, I cannot even begin to imagine life without her. I just wish things could return to how they used to be. I understand why she acted the way she did. Addiction is merciless. She recognized that she could not engage in both substance use and our relationship, so she chose to conceal it from me, perhaps not fully grasping the deep implications of her actions, especially when I eventually found out. There are so many factors in this situation that haunt me whenever I think about them. Regarding advice, is this salvageable? Can trust be restored after all that has happened? Why can't I cry? Is this forgivable? Should I move on? Is this a true reflection of her character or merely a challenging phase of her life? Should I consider ending the relationship before it goes too far and her behavior destroys it? How can I support her in overcoming her long-standing drug addiction? There is likely so much more I could express, but I am unsure how to articulate it. I feel utterly lost in thought, and I do not really have anyone to discuss this with. In summary, my girlfriend lied to me for a year about her drug use and attempts to quit, and I discovered the truth by examining her messages. What should I do next? Thank you for reading.